Finding a really good indie game can be like finding a diamond in a pile of gold. A lot of indie games are very clearly passion projects, having a bunch of time and effort put into them. In an industry that is powered by predatory business practices, unfinished products that sell basic features as DLC, and abusive work environments, it's a breath of fresh air to find a video game that was made by a creator that very clearly cares about the art of game making. Tunic brilliantly blends the game mechanics of Dark Souls and the level designs of early Legend of Zelda, while also having a cute and wholesome art style. Rivals of Aether may have started as a simple Smash Melee clone, but it's evolved past that point, with spin-offs, its own extended universe, more competitive support than Nintendo's ever provided, and Steam Workshop support, so I can make a better version of American politics. Hades faithfully adapts its source material of Greek mythology, while also providing an addicting gameplay loop. Neon White is the literal definition of neuron activation, since the entire point of the game is speedrunning and constantly one-upping yourself. It's also one of the funniest games I've played recently.
Hey, White! Isn't it freaking crazy that John Cena is here in heaven giving us missions?
However, there is one indie game that I think is better than all of these, and that game is Katana ZERO. I bought this on my Switch back in 2019 after seeing it get nominated for an award at the VGAs. I spent about a week or two playing, and after finishing it, I was left speechless. Very rarely does a game make me just sit and think about what I've played, even days after I completed it. Not only is this game a masterclass in storytelling, but an inventive gameplay, dynamic characters, haunting and realistic themes, disturbing imagery, intricate level design, well-crafted bosses, and you get the idea. I truly believe this might be the best indie game I've ever played, and I want to be able to share my thoughts with you guys, so let's just jump into it. Katana ZERO is an indie platform developed by Justin Stander, known online as Axisoft. It was published by Devolver Digital, who are known for publishing a bunch of indie games, like Hotline Miami, Enter the Gungeon, The Messenger, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, My Friend Pedro, the Serious Sam series, Trek to Yomi, Carry On, and the recently released Cult of the Lamb. Katana ZERO was released on PC via Steam, Humble Bundle, and GOG.com, as well as Nintendo Switch on April 18, 2019. It was then released on the Xbox One, free for Game Pass members on December 14, 2020. For the purposes of this video, I'll be playing the Steam version, although I did play the Switch version and they're honestly not at all different. Katana ZERO was first revealed at PAX West in September of 2015. At the time, Adult Swim Games had the publication rights to the game, but they were eventually replaced with Devolver Digital, causing the game to be delayed 3 times. Devolver helped Stander localize the game to 10 different languages, as well as testing the game and noticing bugs even he didn't catch. Stander developed Katana ZERO with a few goals in mind. He wanted to make a game that could be sold commercially, and he wanted to be able to tell a story. There was one thought that influenced the core gameplay: if you died, then it should be easy. Stander thought that modern games were too forgiving towards the players, citing Payday the Heist as an example. Because of this, he designed Katana ZERO to be challenging but fair, allowing the player to recognize and take responsibility for their mistakes. The entire game, from the art style to the soundtrack, has a neon and cyberpunk aesthetic, being inspired by movies like John Wick and... Upon release, Katana ZERO was met with generally favorable reviews, garnering an 8.7 on IGN, 83 on Metacritic, 8 on GameSpot, and 9 out of 10 stars on Nintendo Life. A lot of critics agreed that the game was very stylized and unique, saying that it refines the tried and true one-hit kill formula in a way that makes it feel exciting, fresh, and innovative. The VHS aesthetic as well as the neon art style were also heavily praised. The soundtrack was also praised for being unique when compared to other indie games, and PC Gamer noted that when the protagonist presses play, the name of the song and artist appear briefly in the bottom left of the screen. It's an unexpected touch. I don't often hunt down the soundtrack for a game to listen to after I'm through playing, but for Katana ZERO, I have. However, the story was arguably the most divisive part of the game. Some reviewers praised the plot twist as well as how violent moments are balanced with quieter character moments. Others liked how the game provided context for how the main time manipulation mechanic works. On the other hand, critics said the story was way too open-ended, making it harder to discuss online, the ending was abrupt, the plot was considered generic dystopian fiction with stock characters, and the game teased story moments that ended up having no payoff, which would be problematic if it ever got a sequel. While it never got a sequel, there is currently DLC planned for Katana ZERO. While details are scarce, the biggest pieces of information for it are that it's 6 times the size of the base game, it's far into production but still too early for a release date, and also 100% free. Before I dissect the story, I want to preface by saying that I will be showcasing 2 different runs here. The first run is me being friendly to everyone, as that gives the player the most lore about both the character and the world. The second run is me grabbing the collectibles and antagonizing everyone. You'll see why later. With that out of the way, let's jump into the world of Katana Zero. The player is greeted with a title card that says 10 days remain. The only thing on screen is a line of dialogue from an unknown character that says, "So, tell me more about the men in masks." I see, then let's start from the beginning. There is a man in a suit on a rooftop. He is holding a gun, so it's safe to assume he's some sort of security guard. Another security guard's lifeless body that gets thrown down to where the man is standing. After, a mysterious swordsman hops down to the floor and confronts the guard. The guard fires a bullet, but the swordsman, seemingly slowing down time, deflects the bullet, killing the guard. This swordsman travels the rooftops and enters the building. He then gets a phone call. This unknown caller tells the swordsman that he has to act quickly. The scientist is being held somewhere in the factory. Free him and rendezvous at the extraction point post-haste. Make use of your precognition to eliminate anybody in your way. And remember, leave no survivors. We're already given quite a bit of information within the first 5 minutes. This swordsman seems to be a sort of hitman, and he was sent to a factory to free a scientist. The caller, who we can also assume is his employer, mentions a precognition ability he has. This was demonstrated on the first security guard, and it looks like it gives the swordsman a way to see into the future and act upon it. After that, cue title card. Also, this game has a multiple choices structure. This isn't a choose your own adventure where your choices have major consequences, but your choices do kind of matter. Choosing an option that's red will antagonize whoever it is you're talking to, which can change certain aspects of the story. If you wait until your options are white, you'll be able to calmly talk to them, which can allow you to learn more about the world of Katana Zero. Upon entering the first room, we can already see that he's skilled with his katana, being able to slice enemies with ease. Also, each level is meant to be a demonstration of its ability, since clearing a level will give you a replay of said level, except it's shown through a VHS recording. So when you're playing a level, you're technically seeing into the future and deciding which path will work best. After clearing more levels, the swordsman finds the scientist on a chair pretty bruised up. He also has a bomb collar strapped to his neck. Despite being severely injured, he can still walk relatively fine, so he and the swordsman begin to leave. However, the camera cuts to a blue-haired Russian man who is responsible for detonating the bomb collar. He tells his goons to take out the trash before leaving. After clearing this level, another line of text appears on screen. Your employers are displeased that the mission target was terminated before extraction. Go home and rest, you will receive a new assignment tomorrow. The swordsman arrives at his apartment, clearly run down and poorly maintained, pretty relatable. He walks over to the counter, sips some herbal tea, and turns on the TV before sleeping, hoping the TV can drown out the noise from his neighbors. This news report is actually pretty insightful. We learn that the scientist's name was Dawad Bey, and he was a government scientist working at an abandoned factory in the 3rd District. While asleep, the swordsman has a dream. A little boy is in a house playing cast with a shadowy figure that looks like a little girl. After a bit, another shadow walks to the door before charging at the boy. After the nightmare, the swordsman wakes up. Only 9 days remain. The swordsman walks into the office of a psychiatrist who tells him to take a seat. He says the swordsman looks well despite last night's circumstances. He knows about the mission with Dawad, so it's safe to assume the psychiatrist is either the swordsman's employer or at the very least the middleman in the whole operation. It's been 2 months since we halved your dosage. Are you still experiencing any hallucinations? The swordsman then recounts a nightmare he had to the psychiatrist. They both come to the conclusion that the shadow in his nightmare could have been targeting a machine next to the little boy. The shadow could have been a scientist that the machine belonged to. After that conversation, the psychiatrist gets up and walks to his desk. He injects the swordsman with a mysterious syringe that distorts his vision for a few seconds. On his way out, the swordsman picks up a dossier that has information on tonight's VIP. Josh Rose, well-regarded tech billionaire and philanthropist, chairman of the New Mecca Foundation for Post-War Reconstruction. Clandestine involvement of material and war drugs. Heavily guarded, exercise caution. The swordsman arrives at the Murdower Hotel, but the O and W are blinking, so it spells murder. How subtle. He tries to pass by the receptionist at the desk, but she's immediately enamored with his outfit. He covers it up by saying he's Shinju Sakamura from X vs. X Sakura Redux 2, and until his actual name gets revealed, I'll be referring to him as Shinju because it's better than calling him the swordsman for 40 more minutes. After he's done interacting with the best character in this game, he finds 2 goons in an elevator. He kills one of them, but the other manages to escape. This goon refers to Shinju as the dragon, and no, I'm still going to call him Shinju. He clears some more rooms, interrupts a conversation about beloved common enemy Strong Terry, and reaches Josh. I understand why you're here. I'm not giving you the satisfaction of killing me. Oh, you're not who I was expecting. I'm surprised there's more than one of you left. You don't know? Well, it's no matter. We made a lot of mistakes in the war. He says he regrets the pain he put Shinju through and then hops off the balcony, killing himself. On his way out, a police officer is guarding the lobby. He questions Shinju, obviously he's covered in blood, but the receptionist becomes an unintentional alibi, reaffirming the point that he's cosplaying as an anime character. After the officer roasts his outfit, Shinju leaves. On the way back to his apartment, a little girl bumps into him. Turns out she's his neighbor. After she goes back into her apartment, Shinju enters his. He sips his tea, sleeps on the couch, watches news, yada yada yada. He has another nightmare. The boy is playing catch with a little shadow. A scientist runs into the room, shouts something unintelligible, and then gets shot in the back of the head. This other shadow shoots the boy, causing Shinju to wake up. 8 days remain. Shinju and the psychiatrist follow up the next day, with Shinju explaining the latest nightmare. The psychiatrist thinks the scientist was warning the boy about something and wasn't trying to hurt him. He also thinks these nightmares could be a response to some trauma inflicted by his injury. The psychiatrist then says that Shinju suffered a near-fatal head injury during a war that left him debilitated. Despite his warped perception of time and his memory loss, the two have worked together since. The psychiatrist then reminds Shinju of a service medal he's carrying, which is a crucial link to his past life. Shinju is then asked about his personal life, and he tells the psychiatrist about the little girl. He's confused since apparently the 3rd district is not very safe for children. After getting injected with the good stuff again, Shinju picks up another dossier. DJ Electrohead, popular DJ from upscale 2nd District, involved in the trafficking of club drugs, lightly guarded but surrounded by clubgoers, extreme finesse required to eliminate without detection, pathological liar, do not speak to him. Shinju arrives at the club, named Club Neon. He sneaks past some guards and people just trying to have a good time. After he kills beloved common enemy Strong Terry, he clears some rooms and enters a hallway. His phone rings and the caller hammers in the point of, do not speak to Electrohead. After the call, Shinju walks into a tiny dome and meets Electrohead. He freaks out and falls to the floor, first asking if Shinju is real. Odd question to start off with, but you'll see why. He panics and says he'll give it all back. If the shit I found was yours, I can give it back after the show. Please, don't hurt me. He's being vague and not directly referencing anything, but he's also in a lot of fear, so it makes sense. After some pestering, he starts talking about a drug he found. Felt like time was slowing down, repeating. Been seeing crazy shit ever since. Sounds familiar. Now Electrohead is a bit dubious. It's still in your storage unit. He says he bought the drugs at an auction and was told the original owner was dead. Shinju asks about the name of the drugs, which tips off Electrohead. Shinju's not the guy Electrohead thought he was. He starts threatening Shinju with his boys, who are, reminder, all dead. Now he's scared again, so he starts pleading with Shinju, asking to spare his life. He decides to let him live, but Electrohead is immediately killed. The Russian from earlier then walks out of the club. Based on its appearance and the bullet hole in the dome, it's safe to assume this dude killed Electrohead. Our employers are not aware of the circumstances behind Electrohead's death. I am. You have been negligent in your duties. Future deviants from instruction will be met with strict discipline. In the apartment complex, he meets the little girl again. She introduces him to a toy dinosaur named Behemoth, then starts questioning him, asking him where Leviathan is. Initially confused, the girl reveals that Behemoth will light up when close to Leviathan. Because of this, she assumes that Shinju has him. They look around his apartment and eventually find him under the couch. The girl says Shinju can keep Leviathan for now. You know how the rest goes except for... God damn it, they make me feel bad for killing a common enemy. Cue new nightmare. The scientist gets shot again, but you can actually make out 2 words. Hide. There. The big shadow picks up the tiny shadow and punts her over to the machine. The tiny shadow then turns into the Leviathan toy from earlier. The big shadow then shoots the boy again. Shinju wakes up. 7 days remain. Today's session starts off pretty normally. The psychiatrist isn't as pleased with last night's results as their employers are. He first asks Shinju when he started using a gun. He obviously denies ever using one, but the psychiatrist wants an explanation for how Electrohead died. Once told that Electrohead was shot by a third party, he's confused. Shinju tries to tell him that the Russian that killed Dawad killed Electrohead, but his mind seems elsewhere. The psychiatrist orders Shinju to never speak to anyone or leave his apartment, unless it's for work or to see him. Afterwards, Shinju spills the beans. He spoke to Electrohead despite the order not to. What? Did you speak to Electrohead? I specifically told you not to speak to Electrohead. The psychiatrist explains that the drug Electrohead was referring to could have been the drug Shinju's been on recently, but its current mission is to make sure this drug doesn't fall into the wrong hands. He then reveals that their superiors didn't want Shinju to know about the drug because that knowledge could have compromised the mission. As a veteran, you should know that you're not privy to the full details of the mission. Turns out their mission is to fully eradicate drug trafficking in the 3rd District. The psychiatrist promises Shinju that he can return to a normal life once this is all over. After Shinju gets injected with the goods again, the psychiatrist has one last thing he wants to tell him. The media has been recently calling him the Dragon, the same name as the goon in the elevator at the hotel. Because of this, Shinju has to exercise more caution in the future. Shinju receives his next dossier. Fei Yuan, political dissident and leader of Redacted. Scheduled to testify in military tribunal. Target must be eliminated post-haste. Collateral damage is unacceptable. Stealth and covert action are necessary to prevent additional loss of life. He arrives in the courtyard of a prison. The psychiatrist calls him and reaffirms the point that he can't kill anyone in this mission. Afterwards, the mission starts. The location is the Mutual Nil prison. He enters the building, kicks the door open, and everyone's dead. Every single guard and prisoner was killed by an unknown entity. Every cell in every room is filled with dead bodies. Shinju arrives in his cell and finds Yuan, but he's also dead. His body is warm, so he must have died very recently. While investigating, the police arrive and try to track him down. Shinju then escapes without killing anyone, a task that was much harder than it had to be. On his way back, he meets a homeless person sitting on the street. He starts demanding his medicine from Shinju, saying he killed 6 Cro-Mag bastards in the war. I gave my fucking leg in the war, you just walk by? You owe me, man. He tells the veteran he served as well, with the veteran immediately becoming antagonistic. While the veteran yells at him, Shinju decides to straight up kill him and then leave like nothing happened. The little girl is waiting outside Shinju's apartment. She runs up to him and tells him that some guy with dumb hair told her to give him what looks like a movie. She asks to watch it with him, to which he responds with a firm no. And honestly, good choice, you'll see why in a few seconds. Shinju inserts the movie and watches it. 2 stoners are sitting on a couch talking about model trains when someone knocks at the door. The Russian punches the door open and immediately starts blasting. He knocks one of the stoners out and then ties the other to a chair. The Russian alludes to the fact that the stoners apparently invaded someone else's home and the world is better off without them. He injects the stoner with a funny drug, which gives him the same effect it gives Shinju. It is a work in progress, with the last 2 test subjects dying from using it. He then cuts off one of the stoner's fingers. After roasting his music taste, the Russian says that their neighbor doesn't like music and is in fact the reason why he's there in the first place. Apparently their neighbor can't get any sleep at all. While cutting off another finger, the video abruptly ends. The camera fades to black but focuses on the apartment next door, confirming that the stoners in the stuff film were his neighbors. On tonight's episode of Wacky Nightmares featuring Shinju, the boy is playing with Leviathan. The scientist comes in again and gets shot again. The boy hides under the bed while the shadow walks to the machine messing around with it. After some red flashes, Shinju wakes up. 6 days remain. Shinju walks up to the psychiatrist's office only to see that the door is locked. Office is closed, all appointments rescheduled for tomorrow. On his way back, a limo pulls up and asks him to hop in. Turns out the Russian is in the limo. No way! He starts fanboying over Shinju, not even minding that he killed his men. Once asked about the snuff film from last night, he just glosses over it. Shinju rejects the Russian's offer of some drugs. The Russian says that he and the boys are recreating a wartime combat drug. Shinju won't let him use his sword as a razor, making him politely ask the nice lady lying next to him for one. After snorting the drug like it's cocaine, the Russian brings up a place called Studio 51, which he thinks would be a good place to record another snuff film. He says he did a solid by killing his neighbors, to which Shinju says, the line. You think you're better than me? You kill more people in one night than I have my entire life. Do you know the meaning of respect? Do you understand what I'm offering you? After another glitch, Shinju gets kicked out of the limo. We then cut to the outside of Studio 51. The Russian is there calling someone who he refers to as Snow. While reaffirming that Shinju declined the offer, Shinju shows up. The Russian attempts to kill him, but he deflects the bullet. Both then run into the building. Inside Studio 51 there are 3 floors. Quiet Hills, which is based off of the popular Netflix original series Resident Evil, a Space Uncertainty based off of the Academy Award winning Lightyear,
This right here, this goes far. Feel free to screenshot.
and Chapel of Doom based off of the popular video game Fortnite. Weird to think that Epic Games of all companies just gave Axisoft the rights to use Indiana Jones, but what do I know. Shinju has to collect 3 keys from each of these floors to bypass the gate the Russian put up for him. He grabs the key from Quiet Hills and comes across a Resident Evil reference. I think his name was Nemesis? Afterwards, he gets the Space Uncertainty key and he watches the robot kill itself because it couldn't get any of that robust. He then gets the key in the Chapel of Doom, and if you can tell, I couldn't think of another Fortnite reference to make. Afterwards, he reaches the studio that the Russian is in. The two fight each other until another person passes through Shinju. It's a tall woman with what looks like a white and blue kimono dress. She then talks to the Russian some more, who reveals that her name is Snow, the person he was talking to earlier. She makes fun of Shinju's technique and covers the screen with flower petals. He goes back home and the news report tells us it's Halloween, which gives the little girl an excuse to come into his apartment. As per tradition, he tries to find some candy to give her, settling with only the best kind of candy. He falls asleep, and you better get ready because the next few minutes are going to be a schizophrenic. 2 men show up beside his couch. They're both wearing what look like lab coats and each wearing a mask. These masks are similar to the masks used to symbolize the theater. Their names are Tragedy and Comedy. Tragedy wears what he calls the silver mask of death, and Comedy the golden mask of life. Tragedy talks in Shakespearean English while Comedy talks like the average Twitter user. They apparently drugged Shinju's tea, putting him in essentially a state of sleep paralysis. Tragedy gives him this message. He has 2 masks, the aforementioned ones, but can only wear one. In 3 days he'll have to choose to don the mask of life or death. In other words, he has to choose whether he wants to live, but whichever one he chooses, they will take away the other. Also, Comedy says something interesting. We then immediately get another title card. 4 days remain. Shinju wakes up, and after another visual glitch he hears another voice. So, tell me again about the men in masks. We've officially come full circle, boys. Turns out he's back in the psychiatrist's office, confused as he just woke up there. The psychiatrist keeps ignoring Shinju while he's looking for answers. The psychiatrist immediately becomes aggressive, confusing Shinju even more. He then turns into the Russian and punches him into another level. Shinju then kicks open the door and kills the 2 enemies. Shinju then kicks open the Shinju then kicks open Shinju then kicks open the door and kills the enemy in front of him. After that little glitch, the second best scene of the entire game happens. 28 years in that godforsaken jungle. Killing soldiers wasn't so bad, I hardly remember it. But burning those villages, watching those naked peasants cry, I see it every day. It's not PTSD, it's the drug. It's only been a week, but it feels like a year. Every word is getting longer, the mosquitoes are getting louder. When the drug runs out, time stops, and you're stuck in the jungle forever. It's grains of sand in a shrinking hourglass. I know what comes next. I need to ask you a favor. What this mysterious voice is saying is that withdrawal from this drug is agonizing. The longer you go through it, the more everything around you feels slower. If this drug runs out, Shinju will be stuck in an eternal purgatory of his own mind, replaying the same events over and over. We're now in the same alleyway Shinju killed the veteran in. Now he's the veteran, and the 2 masked men are standing next to him. It's only been a day since his last taste. How can this be? The drink is all this band ever was, and when it is gone, what remains is the bottle. After a visual glitch, we reappear in the psychiatrist's office. The psychiatrist is dead, likely from blunt force trauma, and the little girl is impaled with Shinju's sword. And then the schizo thread is over with the psychiatrist injecting Shinju with the good stuff. He increased the dosage to compensate for being gone yesterday. On his way out, he gets his next dossier. Al-Qasim, secretive founder and CEO of Neotech, a military logistics consultancy. Close ties to New Mecha government, involvement in military R&D. Likely lightly guarded, but proceed cautiously. Shinju proceeds across some rooftops and eavesdrops on a conversation about the latest fashion trends. He breaks through the ceiling and attempts to kill the Russian, but he escapes. After exploring this mansion some more, he walks through one of the floors, until he's tied up in a garage with the Russian standing over him. He tells his subordinate Mr. Kissyface how to dispose of Shinju's body. We also actually learn his name, V, and thank God, because I no longer have to refer to him as the Russian. If you're curious, I call him that 18 times. V steps back, pulls out his gun, and shoots Shinju. We cut back to him being tied up in the chair. He tells V he wants answers, which tips him off. V never told him his name. Shinju taunts the apparent date V has, which causes him to get killed again. 3rd time's the charm. He once again taunts V, who's finally able to put the pieces together. V never actually killed him, he was using his precognition as a way to get inside his skin. We also officially learned the name of the mystery drug.
Kronos!
We then hear some muffled screams coming from the shadows. Turns out Al-Qasim is right here, also tied up. V walks over and interrogates Al-Qasim to no avail. V kicks him over and keeps kicking him. He then walks right back over to Shinju. Shinju then antagonizes him over and over again, riling him up. Once he's all good and angry, he shoots Al-Qasim dead. He then leaves Kitsy Face to deal with Shinju to no avail. Outside the building, V and Snow are chatting together with Snow realizing just how much of a fucking dumbass V is. She leaves and V is just chilling. Shinju then throws a corpse at him and chases him on a motorcycle. He's on a highway killing every other biker with a gun that shows up. After a bit, V shows up on a helicopter. The two fight and the helicopter crashes onto the highway. While bleeding out, V says that he killed 6 Null soldiers previously. After giving himself a cliche nickname, a mysterious voice says he is not the dragon. I am. Afterwards, another swordsman appears and cuts off one of V's arms. He holds him up and cuts the other arm off. We then get another voice line on screen. The psychiatrist is obviously fuming over the incident on the highway. Shinju then walks into a bar occupied by 3 other people. One of them says that they could have blown those fuckers out of the water had they had 6 months left. When they notice Shinju eavesdropping, he says he served, which is followed by them laughing at him. The 3 then chant "fuck the Cro-Mags," which earns Shinju their favor. While drinking, one of the guys tells Shinju about the war he was in. When he came back from his service, he was greeted with hatred by his community. He mentions government mind control spec ops soldiers that were created through a government combat drug program. Apparently there were death squads full of these soldiers massacring everyone. He heard they were on a drug that could let them see into the future. He truly believes his side of the war could have won if the government hadn't instilled these psychic soldiers to fight them. The 2 then drink their heart out until Shinju is fully intoxicated. On his way back home, the little girl is outside of his apartment. She only says a few words that he can understand. Door. Inside. The door. Dad. Run, okay? Help. He doesn't understand any of that and just walks into his apartment. After a good night's rest, someone is knocking at the door. It's the little girl. She thought Shinju was mad at her because she was asking for help, but he didn't understand her. Apparently her dad's friends came over and she hid under the stairs. He tries to make dinner for her, ending up with only the most exquisite meal. He then leaves the apartment, letting her stay in it for the time being. At the psychiatrist's office, he's just a tad upset about the incident on the highway. A visual glitch later, we're back in V's garage. He's standing over us with his arm still cut off. He starts saying that Shinju's in for a wild ride once the withdrawal kicks in. He then explains that once Kronos is completely gone from Shinju's body, time will slow down until stopping completely. He'll end up stuck in his own mind wishing he was dead, an eternity of torture where nobody can help him or even hear him. Cue visual glitch, we're back in the office. The psychiatrist mockingly calls Shinju the dragon, to which he retorts, "I'm not the dragon." Initially in disbelief, Shinju backs up his claim with a full description of the swordsman from the highway. Apparently they have someone on file that fits his description. His new task is to track him down and kill him. He gets another dossier. The dragon? Target of interest, considered, wait a minute, I get why this exists, we need a natural transition into the next mission. But how do you not only get a full dossier prepared during that last mission, but also get a photo of the fuck? Shinju arrives at a casino. A bouncer stops him from entering the VIP lounge and says he needs 100,000 chips to enter. Close enough. He gambles and wins up to 99,999 chips, but luckily Lenny the Lenient will let us enter. But first we get to see some dialogue. The dragon is standing in this room with another character who, according to the wiki, is named the Headhunter, so we'll roll with that. The dragon tells her whoever V worked for is trying to bring back Kronos. He's out trying to get revenge for what the Kronos manufacturers have done to him and people like him. The Headhunter apathetically declines his offer of help, believing all hope is lost. Shinju kicks the door down, and after the dragon leaves, fights the Headhunter. After a small fight, Shinju picks up some security tapes from a prison and then some guards break into the room. He kills them and then runs out. He escapes through Chinatown, killing a large number of police officers along the way. At one point, he's surrounded by SWAT officers. After they threaten him with lethal force, time slows to a crawl and a wall of text appears. The golden moon casteth wide its brilliant smile upon the altar of thy absolution. Thy baptism of blood draws nigh. Tragedy then appears, confusing an officer. The screen turns to a silhouette and comedy also appears. Tragedy reminds Shinju of the warning they gave him before. In 3 days, he'll have to choose whether to bear the gold mask of life or the silver mask of death. In other words, to live or die. Comedy reminds Shinju that this is actually real and the Chronos in his bloodstream is slowly running out. However, him dying will result in the cops and the little girl living their lives. Tragedy then says his choice affects more than himself. Bearing the silver mask will let Shinju embody death itself, and the golden mask will protect the people closest to him. After all of this exposition, he's ready to make his choice. Choosing I Want to Die will result in the cops shooting Shinju, earning you an achievement, and getting sent back to the main menu screen. Choosing I Want to Live will make Tragedy and Comedy kill all the cops surrounding you and continue the game. Tragedy makes sure to remind Shinju multiple times that this choice will affect the people around him. The psychiatrist is furious over what happened at Chinatown. He tells Shinju that he'll be severely punished for what happened. Upon arriving back at his apartment, Shinju sees that the little girl cleaned his apartment for him. Apparently she was so bored that she felt like cleaning, and honestly, same. He places the prison security tapes on the table, which excites the little girl, only for them to rent a samurai movie from the library instead. Based on the dialogue, it sounds like a really fun movie. After the girl falls asleep, Shinju turns on the prison tapes. We can see a group of security guards having a conversation outside of themselves until the dragon shows up. After slicing and dicing his way through the prison, he arrives at the cell that has Fei Yuan in it. In case it wasn't obvious already, this is the Mutual Nil prison days before our mission. The dragon starts interrogating Yuan, forcing him to give up the names of everyone involved in the recreation of Chronos. He didn't know anyone was trying to bring him back, but what he can say is that the government isn't involved since only a few people have the necessary resources. He then gives one more name, Leon von Alvensleben, who was apparently the creator of Chronos. After getting what he wants, the dragon drowns Yuan in the toilet, letting us discover him a few days later. On his way back to the psychiatrist's office, Shinju gets an unknown call. Leon von Alvensleben, 3rd District Slaughterhouse and Meat Processing. Your questions will be answered. He takes the caller's advice and heads for the slaughterhouse. He enters a room with a large TV on the wall. The screen turns on and Leon appears, saying, "It's been a while since I've had a visitor." This slaughterhouse used to be the testing facility for new null projects. Every scientist and soldier was run through Leon's own gauntlet. He shoots Shinju once and lets him proceed. After some more tests, he reaches what Leon calls the final portion of the null test. He says there's an astronomical fail rate on the sets, and honestly, no wonder. After the test, Leon comes to the conclusion that Shinju is a Gamma Null, the highest ranking Null soldier. In the final room, he says that the Gamma Null's mastery of time and combat should have made them win the war. However, he shoots the laboratory under Shinju's feet, saying that Chronos and the Null project were failures. Shinju enters another lab, this one with a cryo chamber at the very end. He turns on a machine which then turns on a TV, with Leon running through the same lines he said at the very beginning of the level. This essentially means that everything we've seen him say thus far has been pre-recorded. He walks over to the cryo chamber and opens it, which causes Leon to fall out of it and immediately disintegrate. After arriving back at his apartment, the girl tells Shinju that she found something really cool. Now the actual best scene in the game happens. Shinju and the girl are on the roof of the building and looking out at the city. You can't see all the muck and trash up here, it's just the lights. Shinju promises the girl that they're going somewhere further and better than what they're seeing, even farther than the 2nd District. He pulls out his medallion, which prompts curiosity of the girl. I haven't taken it off in 7 years. It reminds me that no matter what I'm doing, I did something good once. He then throws it off the rooftop, saying he has other reminders now. After deciding to stay up here a little bit longer, the girl says she doesn't want the men in masks to hurt her, to which Shinju promises to protect her. We then get our last title card, Judgment. The girl wakes Shinju up and says she made him some breakfast. After eating what can only be described as 5-star dining, the girl lets Shinju borrow Behemoth and then he leaves. Shinju then goes to the psychiatrist's office. He's clearly upset about Shinju's lack of compliance, but Shinju interrupts him by bringing up Chronos. He then rails the psychiatrist with some more damning information like meeting Leon. Now he's the interrogator. The psychiatrist tells him that he presumably had a normal upbringing, but he had a sort of aggression and psychopathy that made him a prime candidate for the Gamma Null treatment. He was also given Chronos to be a super soldier for New Mecha. Null performed questionable and morally dubious treatments, but nobody thought about the lasting impacts of Chronos. After this info dump, Shinju picks up another dossier. Bunker. Eliminate any and all sensitive material currently stored in the safe room of Al-Qasim's bunker located in the Center for Synergetic Research. Expect heavy resistance. Leave no survivors. Shinju arrives at the bunker, and after once again meeting the best character in the game, he clears floor after floor after floor after floor after floor after floor after floor of the bunker. Once he reaches a certain elevator, a suicide bomber blows himself up, knocking Shinju unconscious. Cue another nightmare. After the scientist gets shot, the shadow reveals itself and it's wearing the same uniform that the headhunter wore. It fiddles with the machine and then we cut back to reality. After a replay, tragedy and comedy have a small conversation, saying, "The first act's climax doth approacheth." Shinju clears some more rooms and finds the headhunter again. This fight ends with some mines on the floor exploding. The headhunter correctly assumes Shinju is a Gamma Null. She thought the dragon, who she calls 15, and herself are the last Null soldiers left. She thinks Shinju is here for the Chronos, to which he says he isn't. This confuses her because there's apparently nothing of value in the bunker, so she assumes he's just here for the thrill of killing. Killing is the only time we're able to touch that thing we were never able to have. She compares her and Shinju to gods, saying she's essentially seen time expand and they're immortal. Despite this, they're slaves to the government who use Chronos against them. They couldn't even work together since there won't be enough Chronos for both of them. After this conversation, the fight begins. After the climax of the fight, the headhunter is crawling across the floor, saying, "Kill the people who did this to us." Shinju chops her head off and uses it on a retinal scanner. He enters a room locked behind the scanner and finds a mother and her 2 children. He walks up to them and draws his blade. But then, another hallucination. He's in the room his nightmares take place in, and the boy is standing in front of him. A small glitch sends us back to the bar from earlier, and then a bunch of text boxes pop up, saying "Kill the child." After stepping back into reality, he runs away. Turns out his targets were indeed that family, and he failed his mission by letting them live. The psychiatrist is in a state of panic, since he hasn't been able to reach his daughter all day. He's fuming at this point, going so far as to call Shinju a goddamn junkie. Shinju punches the psychiatrist to the floor and punches him some more. He pleads for his life to no avail. After saying the line, Shinju beats the psychiatrist's head in with a plaque from his desk. He rushes to the desk, grabs some syringes, and quickly injects himself with some Chronos. After the withdrawal ends, he loots a new mecha government keycard off of the psychiatrist's corpse. He then picks up another dossier where we finally learn Shinju's real name. Subject 0, Null Executioner Class, Gamma Squadron. High value government contractor open for third party contracts. Must be eliminated discreetly upon questioning a role or gaining knowledge of Chronos manufacture process. Shinju arrives back at his apartment and it appears to be a crime scene. There are 2 police officers and the landlord of the complex. Both his and his neighbor's apartments were broken into, with the neighbor being killed. He asks if anyone's seen the little girl anywhere, and everyone's confused. The landlord doesn't let children in her apartments, and the police officers don't believe children can live in the 3rd district. The officers try to take Zero in for questioning, which leads him to run away. And then, our last title card, 7 years ago. Instead of opening with another hallucination, we get to actually see what happened all those years ago. The scientist's words are fully legible. "Hide quickly, Null soldiers." The soldier walks over to the machine and overloads it. He picks up the Leviathan toy on the floor and reveals himself to actually be Zero all along. 15 can also be seen outside. After that, we cut to a shot of a burning village and roll credits. But we aren't exactly done yet. There are a few mid-credit scenes that give a small bit of insight into what happened after the story. In the first one, Snow can be seen in a large room with a shadowy figure. She tells the figure that V is dead and was killed by 15. The shadow then says they'll need to wage open war with the government. The second one shows 15 in front of a bulletin board and V's corpse inside of a closet. After that, we see that the masked men kidnapped the little girl. And that's how Katana ZERO's story ends. It's a lot to take in. I, for one, had a lot of questions after beating this for my first time. Who exactly was the psychiatrist and, by extension, Zero working for? What about V and his crew? Why exactly do they want to recreate Chronos? Why does their plan involve killing the only people who know how to make it? What was Leon doing in a cryo chamber? When do we get to watch anime with the receptionist? Are the masked men and the little girl even real? But in my opinion, that's where the charm of the game comes from. There's a lot of opportunities for fans to come up with their own theories that answer these questions, which opens a bunch of opportunities for online discussion. And when you've confused your entire fanbase to the point where Reddit detectives have to come up with all of these theories, you've made a really good game. Now I'm going to be talking about the gameplay elements from the combat to the keys to the secret boss fight. I want to preface by saying I apologize if this section seems really brief compared to the story. In my God of War 3 video I managed to balance it out since I was constantly comparing 3 to the rest of the series and there were a lot of topics to cover. However, here it's pretty difficult to think of a bunch of different gameplay related things to discuss. I already spent many minutes talking about the best part of the game, so I'll just have to wing it with talking about the rest of it. Let's quickly discuss your UI for a bit. On the left you have a gauge that looks like a battery. This will deplete whenever you slow down time, but also quickly regenerate. In the middle you have a bar with an hourglass on the left, and that's your timer. It shows how long you have to complete the level you're currently on, and it's about 2 minutes, so you have plenty of time. On the right you get to see what weapon you currently have equipped and whatever projectile weapon you're holding. There are 10 missions in this game and each one is broken up into several levels. In order to clear a level you have to kill every enemy in the room, with the exception being the mutual nil prison. There are 3 ways you can combat your enemies: your sword, projectiles, and the time manipulation. Your sword is just a basic weapon that you use to actually kill the enemies, but it can also deflect the most projectiles. You can also pick up certain objects lying in each level and throw them at the enemy as a way of killing them. These can be a potted plant, a bust, a flamethrower, a molotov, or a smoke grenade. They act as a means of secondary fire, allowing you to dispose of one enemy and then quickly kill the other with your sword. The third is your time manipulation. You can slow down time and give yourself more time to dodge an enemy bullet or a hazard. You can also react to said hazard quicker than you would without slowing down time, give you a larger window to react. Combining all 3 tactics will make you the ultimate killing machine. In most action games you're either given a full health bar to work with or hearts that will deplete after taking damage. Katana ZERO isn't one of these games. Instead, it employs a one-hit kill mechanic. Every enemy in the game will die from one hit, but at the same time, you die from one hit. Getting hit once will return you to the beginning of the level and allow you to restart. This isn't the only game to do it, Ghost Runner does the same. This employs another level of skill since your objective is to clear the level without getting hit. Although it's barely any different, I should talk about 15's combat style. You only ever play as him in the Dragon's Tape level. The UI is similar to Zero's, except instead of blue and purple, it's yellow. Also, instead of throwing projectiles, he has a move called Dragon Dash that lets him teleport a certain distance in front of him and kill every enemy in his line of sight. It's a pretty cool move, all things considered, but all in all his combat's not too dissimilar to Zero. There is, however, something interesting to mention. There's a mod for Katana ZERO out there called Katana 15. What this does is swap 0 and 15, letting you play as a ladder for a majority of the game. You even get to see 15 interact with the girl and the psychiatrist. One thing to note is that you seemingly can't find projectiles in this mod, but you can still use the Dragon Dash, so there's that. If this mod interests you, I'll leave a link to it in the description. While there are no traditional collectibles in the game, there are 6 keys you can find, 5 of which unlock new swords you can equip on Zero. These are scattered throughout the game and most of them require you to complete different side objectives. I'm going to explain how you get every key in the game and what the swords they unlock do. I'll go in order from the first key you can unlock to the very last one. The first key is the Prism key. In the opening of the game, after you deflect the guard's bullet, go left and loot his corpse. There you'll get the Prism key, which unlocks the Prism sword. What this does is change the color of the enemy's blood to the different colors of the rainbow. Essentially, the walls are your canvas and their blood is your paint. Pretty artistic. The second is the Master Key. In the mission in the Murdower Hotel, you'll want to kill Josh Rose before he jumps off the balcony. In order to achieve this, pick up any projectile on the level, whether it's the cleaver or the bust. Make sure to throw your projectile at Josh as soon as you open the door, preventing the cutscene from triggering. Once that's done, loot his corpse and you'll get the Master Key. This will unlock the Sword of Masters, which is a reference to the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda. The sword acts similar to the default katana, except it will shoot a projectile at the enemy once fully charged. The third key you unlock is the Prototype Key. This is done by completing the Mutual Nil prison without killing anyone. Be ready because this is very difficult. Here are some tips that can help make it easier for you. Holding your projectile button and moving left or right will allow you to sneak behind a guard without alerting him. Inside of the prison you can hide inside one of the cells and that will prevent the guard from noticing you, giving you a chance to escape. In this hallway you'll want to enter this room and wait for a little bit. You can see security camera footage of the guard walking past the door. Once he's made it past, you can successfully escape. In the outside area there will be spotlights that will illuminate you, so you'll have to be careful. In the darkness, if you stand inside the green section of their line of sight, they'll still be able to notice you, so use the bleachers to your advantage. Once all is said and done, you'll have to go through the cutscene with the veteran and then arrive at the apartment. Once you do, you'll see an open briefcase on the floor. Interact with it and you get the Prototype Key, which unlocks the Claymore prototype. This is the slowest weapon in the game, but also has the highest width and range, allowing you to deflect shotgun blasts and bypass the attacks of the skinny Rickies. The Phoenix Key is unlocked in the Mansion mission. In one of the levels, there will be a burglar looting a briefcase. After killing every other enemy in the level, walk up to the room the burglar is in, but don't open the door. Wait until he leaves. This takes a minute or two. Once he's gone, enter the room and search the suitcase. This will earn you the Phoenix Edge. This sword has a slower swing speed but longer reach than the katana. The sword will shoot a burst of flame after each swing, killing more enemies and detonating oil barrels. The last sword key to unlock is a Savant Key. This is done by completing the Slaughterhouse mission without waking up Leon. This can be confusing to follow, so I'll break down each step bit by bit. In the second room, where you would normally meet Leon for the first time, kill the strong Terry outside the view of that camera. Jump up and cut the red wire. In the room with the 2 conveyor belts, you'll need to roll dodge past the security cameras on the ceiling. Do this successfully and you get to skip this entire section. Enter the room that Leon normally shoots, and on the desk you'll find the Savant Key. Also, fun fact, if you avoid the cameras in the next 2 rooms, you'll get an extra bit of dialogue after the mission. You missed a valuable opportunity to learn about the Null program and your origins. Ask your shrink about Null and Kronos, he might have something interesting to say. The Savant Key unlocks the Savant Knife, the final sword. This has the shortest range of any sword in the game, but is also the fastest. It's so fast that spamming it in the air will allow you to float for a short period. However, that's not the final key to unlock. What you'll need to also get is a new mecha government keycard. You simply unlock this by searching for the psychiatrist's corpse near the end of the game. You'll be able to access the government lab on the level select screen. This also implies that the psychiatrist was working for New Mecha, which answers one of the questions that I had earlier. The government lab is a small level that will allow you to swap your swords. There's also a door at the far end that's locked, but that door is where we'll be accessing the DLC when it releases. There isn't much else to add here. Psychotherapy is the name of the achievement you earn by successfully completing the psychiatrist's boss fight. You won't naturally encounter this fight like you would the fights with V and the Headhunter. You have to actually go out of your way to unlock it. It's a fairly simple process, so I'll explain each step what the fight itself actually is. If any new story bits appear during this run, I'll point them out for you. In the opening mission, once the psychiatrist calls you, keep hanging up. You only have to keep doing this until the red bar is extremely tiny, after which you can choose sorry about that or hello. Then keep choosing get on with it. That's all you have to do for this stage. During your first session with the psychiatrist, he'll remind Zero that this mission of theirs hinges on cooperation and trust, 2 things that we'll have to avoid for this entire run. Once the options pop up, spam I just want the medicine, until the psychiatrist caves in and gives them to you. That's all for this session. In the Murdower Hotel mission, be rude to the receptionist by choosing the red options. This will infuriate her, letting you proceed to the mission anyway. At the very end of the mission, she'll immediately tell the officers that's the guy, forcing you to kill them. She then gets killed off screen. That's all you'll have to do in this mission. In the second session with the psychiatrist, do the same thing you did before, forcing him to give you your medicine. After that, we're at Club Neon. When the psychiatrist tries to call Zero again, immediately hang up. When you talk to Electrohead, don't kill him. Instead, let him live long enough to tell you about Kronos until V shoots him. During the session after the Club Neon mission, choose answer my questions first. After it, wait until the option I spoke to Electrohead appears, and select that. Instead of choosing the red options, keep refusing the medicine until the psychiatrist kicks you out of the office. During this interaction, the psychiatrist will tell Zero that, in his eyes at least, he holds the power of a god. He'll also start yelling at Zero when he brings up the media calling him the dragon, as opposed to him being lenient. Upon opening Fei Yuan's dossier, the word kill is repeated across the entire page, foreshadowing what the next step is. Also, before the mission starts, instead of the psychiatrist calling Zero Tragedy Will, he'll say, Obeyest thou my command, make death this night and let no man escape thy blade. Now go, slake thy errant heart's unending thirst of blood. During this next mission, kill every police officer you see, which must be super satisfying after having to avoid them. After completing this mission, a line of text of tragedy will appear. He says, The silver moon shines death o'er New Mecca. Thy task is complete, O errant heart, until next we speak. This is the final step. At the end of the psychiatrist session after the mansion mission, choose the red fuck you option. This will officially sever your relationship with him and should unlock the fight. After the slaughterhouse mission, if he says, I'm almost disappointed that you're still alive after what you've put me through, you know you successfully unlocked him. This fight won't happen immediately after that though, it takes place after the bunker part 2. The psychiatrist will push Zero down to the ground and say, "Did you really think Kronos was the only drug the government developed for the war?" He pulls out some syringes and injects himself with a green drug. He then turns into Ultra Instinct therapy pills, and now I get to explain how the fight works. During the first phase, he'll summon some giant hands that will attempt to grab Zero. If a hand grabs him, the psychiatrist will pop his head off like Shinnok in Mortal Kombat X. You have to hit the hands in order to beat this phase. Afterwards, the psychiatrist will clone himself and fire orbs at Zero. Deflecting the orbs will get rid of one of the clones, so keep doing that until one remains. The next phase is definitely something. You'll have to hit all the eyes that show up on screen, but each time you do, there will be a different visual effect to confuse you. The screen will change colors, split into 4 tiny screens, invert and blend said screens, simply flip the screen upside down, and then leave persistent after images. Once this is all done, the final phase will begin. The psychiatrist will turn into a deformed monster. Flying syringes will attack Zero, which he'll have to dodge. Sometimes the monster will try and jab Zero with a syringe, which he'll also have to dodge. These tiny creatures will also appear, and you'll have to either attack them directly or deflect the orbs they shoot at you. Sometimes the psychiatrist will pop up, and you'll have to hit him once. Do this 3 times and the fight will end. Zero will be sitting on the chair, and the psychiatrist will have his sword impaled through his eye. If you want the lore explanation behind this fight, here's my personal theory. This fight never happened. Throughout the entire run, we are spending as much time away from Kronos as possible, denying the medicine whenever given the chance. This sent us into withdrawal quicker than it normally would have, so this entire fight is how Zero envisioned what was probably as simple as just stabbing the psychiatrist. This might not be an unpopular opinion, but this is seriously my favorite fight in this game. Not only do you have to go through a specific process in order to actually get it, it's the most creative one there is. There are multiple phases, different visual effects, and it has a kick-ass theme song. All in all, really good boss fight from start to finish. There's only one extra game mode available in Katana ZERO, Speedrun mode. In this mode you'll be able to, speedrun the game, and try and get the fastest score possible. You'll be able to change different settings, so you'll just be focusing on the action. You can disable cutscenes and replays, enable the max range of 15 strike and dash, disable the psychiatrist boss fight, disable the time manipulation, and choose your weapon. Once you change the settings enough, you can start your run. If you selected the options, you'll get to see 2 extra additions to your UI. Next to the timer, you'll see a death counter so you can keep track of how many times you died, both in the specific stage and the entire run so far. There will also be a stopwatch on the right, which will specify both the current stage and your entire run. Those are the only extra additions Speedrun mode specifically will add, but it is worth noting that there's an achievement you earn for completing the game in under 29 minutes. On the settings screen, you may have noticed an additional setting, Hard Mode. In my God of War 3 video, I said that, in my personal opinion, there should always be at least a noticeable difference in difficulty apart from the enemies dealing more damage. Most of the time, all a developer will do is increase an opponent's health and damage, but there are exceptions. Since Katana ZERO is a one-hit kill game, the developers can't increase health or damage, neither for the enemies nor for Zero. So instead, they added more enemies and hazards onto each level. I will say, I like this change. Granted, there isn't much else they could have done, but I like that the options are there in the first place. Also, there will be at least one new enemy exclusive to hard mode. The one I found was a variant of the Skinny Ricky, kicking Zero and killing him while he's down. As far as I know, you can't roll past him, so you have to kill him up front. To put it simply, if you like synthwave, you'll love the Katana ZERO soundtrack. The entire soundtrack is full of these electric and synthetic tones that are reminiscent of games and movies with a cyberpunk setting. I was looking at the official Wikipedia page for this game and saw that Bill Kiley and Ludowick, who are the main composers, looked at 1980s electronic music for inspiration, since the game's main themes, including drug use and the effect of war on a nation's spirit, were relevant in the 1980s during the aftermath of the Vietnam War. This is very prevalent in the soundtrack since the listener can visualize and resonate with the themes the soundtrack, and by extension the game, expresses, those of war, substance abuse, and the damaging of the human psyche. The overarching motif throughout the game, other than the atrocities of war, is drug use. The protagonist is a drug addict. Every main antagonist is connected to drugs, whether as a manufacturer, dealer, or another addict. Songs like V Limo and Worst Neighbors Ever exemplify this, since they sound a lot like songs that will be played at clubs and raves. You know, places where drug use is prevalent. On the topic, Hit the Floor is a literal club song being used during the DJ Electrohead mission, so that also counts. Another fact that plays into drug use is the concept of withdrawal. Zero suffers from this constantly, especially in the second half of the game. The Sandman 2 does a good job at accompanying any situation where Zero is going through withdrawal. The second biggest theme of the game is war, and the lasting impacts it can cause. Blue Room is the name of the song that accompanies the cathedral scene. The song fits the tone of the scene at hand. The mysterious voice is telling Zero all about the side effects of the drug. He'll be stuck in a prison of his own mind, constantly reliving the same moments of his life. The songs help the player really take in the gravity of these words. Come and See is the name of the song that plays during the end credits. As a reminder, the final shot of the game is a burning village. This song without context can be calm and soothing, enough to let the listener relax a tiny bit. In my opinion, this song is a perfect reflection of how the Null soldiers probably felt about all of this senseless killing. They were numb to it, bar a few exceptions. Throughout the game, characters like Zero and the Headhunter will say that they've been desensitized to all the killing. They no longer feel any satisfaction or guilt from the act. This song is a great way to express that idea. Most of the boss themes in this game are really nothing to write home about. It feels like there wasn't a lot of focus put on said boss themes, and instead, all the attention was diverted to the quieter moments in the game. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind this at all, quite the opposite actually. This isn't your average ARPG hack and slash like God of War where the bosses are the central focus. They don't have to make bombastic songs for the fights with V and the Headhunter. I actually feel like that would in a sense detract from the immersion the soundtrack provides. The only time it really makes sense to have an action-filled song is during the final phase of the psychiatrist fight, and we got that with Boss Boss Boss. It's a great song that blends in well with what kind of a boss the psychiatrist's final form is, just a deformed blob of meat. To end this segment, the soundtrack of Katana ZERO is magnificent. The composers managed to thoughtfully intertwine the narrative of the game with the music, and all of their hard-earned effort paid off. Instead of placing all their attention on action songs that'll get over 5 million views on YouTube, they instead tried to tell a story. The story of a broken veteran turned drug addict who just wants some answers. If you have the money, I'd suggest buying the official album, either off of Bandcamp or Steam. I for one bought it on Steam for $10. Before ending this video, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I did all my voiceovers on August 17th, and at the time I wasn't expecting any information about the DLC to appear anytime soon. That's why it surprised me to see the gameplay video be posted on YouTube. If it wasn't for that footage being posted, I probably wouldn't have finished making this video until maybe October. I'm not going to analyze this footage, but I will say that it looks great. This also means I'll 100% be making a video on the DLC whenever it releases. On the topic of video ideas, here are the videos I can say with the utmost confidence are coming at some point. The first is the aforementioned video on the Katana ZERO DLC. The next is my long overdue Ghost Runner video. I'm going to start writing the script and or gathering the footage at some point, but if the Katana ZERO DLC releases soon enough, I'll pause production on that video and make the DLC one. The third one is a video titled Several Idiots React to the Game Awards. If you aren't aware, in 2020 I made a video where my friends and I reacted to the Game Awards. This event, for those who don't know, is the second biggest gaming event of the year behind E3. It's essentially the Oscars, where different iterations of The Last of Us get awards.
The Last of Us Part 2.
For best narrative?
I was going to make one for last year, but my computer froze halfway through the stream. Now I have a computer that's capable of recording for more than 4 hours straight.
When the hell is Elden Ring?
Yeah, what the
I think
probably
I've
gonna
heard
get
of
the
it.
award.
Come on, come on.
What is
Yep, I
Elden Ring?
knew it. I knew it.
Is
What?
So anticipated, you've never even heard of it. That's how anticipated.
Elden Ring, let's go!
I do have a few more videos that aren't confirmed, but I'm at least entertaining the idea of. I've been thinking about making smaller scale reviews of Bayonetta 3 and God of War Ragnarok, since those are the two big name games I've been looking forward to the most this year. I'd probably also make a video outlining my favorite games released this year. This was a really good year both for AAA and indie games, so there's a lot to choose from. For now, I might not make another Genshin rolling video because they already released the best character as Subaru, and there probably isn't going to be anyone I'm looking forward to in the foreseeable future apart from maybe Sinnoh. With all that out of the way, thanks for watching. Make sure to Venmo me $500, and if this video gets to 15 more billion likes, I'll show you how to build a dresser at the Katana ZERO DLC.